which makes sense. I also think the email thing, because you guys have what, 6 million subscribers? There's got to be a way for you to.
Yeah, we have 6 million subscribers. 5 million of those are digital.
By the way, let's just roll. This is it. Just go.
Okay. Yeah. Let's
go on.
All right, Eric, you do the kickoff.
No, this is good. I was saying we could bring. Oh, actually, that's right. I should probably do a kickoff.
We gotta intro it before we start talking about it. I appreciate this.
Yeah, no.
You're gonna make editing hard for Ryan.
I always. That's why, if you notice, the beginning of every episode is a bit of a rolling start. I never just start at go, because we never start at go.
All right. So, Jay, what is your title now these days?
What is your title?
Yeah, Senior Director of Revenue Analytics and Operations, which oversees 3 different distinct teams. I have the yield team, programmatic, and then advertising analytics within the ad department.
Well, I think that's the intro right there. Welcome, Jay. Jay's joining us from the New York Times. Many of you know him. If you don't, one of the smartest guys in the business today, and we're lucky, a good friend. And we're here to talk about, a recent announcement. Obviously, a lot happening in how publishers are going to be able to sort of navigate some of the big changes that are coming up as it relates to the sort of sunsetting of the third-party cookie. Some are going all in first-party ASAP. Some will have a mix of a couple of different things. But just this past week, a big announcement from the New York Times team. And we're lucky we've got Jay to talk about a few things that are going on there and clear up, I think, some of the speculation that's out there in the marketplace and just sort of get into it. So anyway, so with all that being said, welcome, buddy.
Welcome, Jay.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Ryan, it's always good to see you.
As we always do,
Always
likewise.
good.
We do a breakfast. Cheers here. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
So Jay,
I haven't had a proper brunch in a while, so this is good.
Yeah, right. Normally, we might be able to do this in person, but
someone give me a poached egg.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
Eggs Benny now.
Yeah, exactly.
Some more of this handcrafted sauce over my head right now.
Yeah.
So, but since this is the way we can do it now, tell us a little bit about like what we would talk about at brunch, right? So some big news, and then what's happening your way.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying earlier, is like a lot of our focus and attention on the Times right now is around our first party announcement. And the Times has made a bold statement, and probably earlier than a lot of other publishers are making, that we want to remove our dependency off of third party data. And so we made the announcement that we're launching a slew, I think it's 45 segments to start, first party audience segments for our advertisers to start purchasing starting July 1, with the goal of completely moving off of third party data in 2021, which is a year ahead of the demise of the third party cookie within Chrome. But we've actually made this a priority of ours before Google even made the announcements around Chrome. We just think it's the right thing to do. We're focused on privacy and respecting our readers' privacy as much as possible. So it's aligned with our enterprise strategy and advertising strategy. So that's why we jumped into this quicker than I think a lot of people anticipated.
Yeah, I'll definitely say, to your credit, you guys are the first that I've heard of saying it. I know there's been a bit of discussion trying to figure out what exactly you said. So
me personally, or the announcement?
All the above. Always.
Yeah, all the above.
I don't even know how to say my last name properly, so you know.
It's like Worcestershire. Say it real quick.
Yeah, all three of us have challenging last names, so we just skip right over it.
Okay, so the first one for you guys, just so I'm clear, is it for basically anything that you've sold, you guys are not going to use third party? Like, there's no way for you to prevent third party cookies or usage or whatever until basically they go away from like open auction, though my understanding is that's pretty much a small part of your total programmatic at this point, or because I think you ripped open out of the app, so now it's only web for you guys anyway.
Yep.
So then this move to strictly first party targeting is for like direct sold. Is it deal IDs and PG too? Is that like sort of what this is?
So yeah, I mean, direct is our primary focus. we don't have programmatic open auction in our apps environments anymore. We made that decision to improve our reader experience. App is the environment that we see some of the most engagement, which is healthy and good. And so we made that decision. So for the first party segments, it's definitely tailored and focused on our direct business, which is the lion's share of our focus, attention, and revenue. It is, I think this opinion is different across a lot of different publishers. We see programmatic guaranteed as a direct business, right? And we try and do very similar things and make our products accessible to buyers when they want to have a direct relationship with us, right? So I think that's going to be our primary focus as we evolve and make and introduce new segments available. So will, you know, new environments, new transaction types also become available. But in the near term, it's highly focused on direct business, which is traditional direct IO and also programmatic guarantee.
Can I ask you a question about that real quick? Because I remember a conversation we had, you know, a year ago, and it was like, it was really progressive. And I thought it was awesome to hear about how, I guess, you know, to what you're speaking about right now, you, as an organization and as teams, you had to make conscious decisions to almost, you know, sort of redefine, you know, what certain things look like. And so you could be a little bit further ahead, right? Where some publishers still internally don't treat certain deals as direct. And I thought that was really progressive. Can you talk just a little bit about how that worked out? Did that require like multiple sort of stakeholders within the organization, or was it really working, you know, with different departments? Like, just walk us through that, because I think there's still a lot of really big publishers out there that sort of struggle with that, you know, and I don't think it's perfect yet, but I always thought that was a really good conversation we had like a year and a half ago about that.
I will say that we are fortunate at the Times. We're a subscription first business, not a digital advertising business first. We don't live and die by a 300 by 250 banner, which is a lot of freedom that a lot of other publishers can't, you know, enjoy or don't enjoy. And so we really always cater towards what is best for our users, which ultimately I think will drive more engagement, which, you know, in most organizations, that's just page views. And so we benefit from that. We do try our best to have those direct relationships. The Times is unique in the fact that we have a great partnership with most brands direct, and in addition to the agencies. A lot of people want to work with the Times because in its own right, it's a great brand. So we've been a little bit more progressive on what do deals look like, how do we partner with agencies and brands, and how they want to spend with us. You know, some of the largest tech companies out there buying both direct and then programmatically are switching how they spend and focus their investment by deal type, and that has actually only escalated recently. And we're open to that because we can recognize it. The areas that we struggle and don't feel comfortable is when we can't recognize it and it's hard to match. And there's another advertiser out there that tries to reconcile direct, programmatic, both PMP, PG, and open. It sounds like Ryan knows exactly who I'm talking about without saying the name. And it's impossible, right? And it's like match rates, if you want to look at the entire ecosystem, is like, I think I heard a stat recently, like 13 or 15% of the time you can actually match the exact impression. And so we really just don't want to be around that, right? We want to embrace the transparency and being able to reconcile who's on the Times. The other part I would say is we like the direct relationships and are a little bit more progressive on the deals, is because we just don't want bad ads. And I know that's highly subjective, but everyone's got opinions and everyone wants to tell us when an ad doesn't look good or is not adjacently aligned as well. So we a lot of times default to being more conservative on what types of ads that we accept as well, which usually the higher qualities are in deals and traditional IOs.
All right, so I spent some time on a newsletter this week digging into just like theory on how you guys could do this first party only. Like some of those 45, as I saw, because you kind of group them 6 different ways, I think it said.
Yeah.
And some of those look purely like third party enrichment segments. And so the thought for me, those were the most interesting. How do you get using a first party only data
Mm-hmm.
The theory I've heard most from others after I put that out was, Ryan, you're dumb. They're just white labeling data from X, Y, or Z sources. But talking to you, it sounds like, now I'm not sure how much you can get into this, but I'm curious to hear like how do you, in a somewhat accurate way, overlay, say like, all right, first party only data, I'm going to give you household income of over 100K, plus these are theater enthusiasts. Boom. So like half of that is contextual. Of course, you're going to know that, I assume, place with the data science and all of that the New York Times has. But the first half of that is pretty hard to do in a first party only world, especially when like I'm a subscriber and you only have my email and delivery address. You guys don't have my income. So how do you derive that?
That is an interesting point of information I would like to have, though. You're welcome to fill out a survey to tell us. Benchmarking what we all make in the industry that way, that's a nice way. We don't do that, though. It's not white labeling third-party data. That is absolutely not the case. We do benefit from having a lot of scale. Obviously, a lot in the realm of premium publishers, not compared to like the platforms. And because of that, we are able to ask our readers questions. And so realistically, we've asked thousands of our readers, both the subscribers, such as yourself, the registered users, where you're reading a certain allotment of articles per month for free. And then
a reg wall? I think I've heard that. Since I'm a subscriber, I don't think I've been hit with it. But like,
then you don't read in Safari then either. Then it sounds like.
I don't actually. Well, no, I have my pop-up blocker on Safari, so on mobile. So I'm a terrible person.
Safari is hard for all publishers, but no. So we have three audience types, and there's subsets within that. But like at the broad level, we have subscribers, which are paying readers, and then we have reggies, where it's a group of people that have not decided to pay but still want to read our content, and they get that access by entering an email address, and then they have X number of free articles per month. And then we have anons, right? People that just come in but don't register and don't subscribe. They have a much more smaller allotment of articles that they can read per month. And what we've done for this first party part is we ask them questions. We ask them to tell themselves about themselves to us. And before we even started that survey, we introduced a new survey and asked our readers, would they even tell us about them, right? About themselves. And we were upfront. It's like, we're going to use this to make a better reader experience, which includes enriching the ads that you see. And the survey results were overwhelmingly yes, right? We will give you this information to make our experience better. So once we got that yes in that initial survey, we started running a very large survey to ask them about the HHI, what they do, who they are, age, all the demo information. And we have to be very like rigorous and like selective in what kind of questions. We're not asking if they like to, do pottery, right? Like that would be a useless question. I mean, maybe someone would find it interesting, but we have to be really selective and build in our segments. And then once we get that data, then our data science team looks at a large amount of data and how they interact and behave on site. And then we can make some deterministic like assumptions that they're theater enthusiasts, as what you were mentioning. And obviously that segment makes a lot of sense for the Times, since Broadway is so synonymous with the New York Times. But yeah, that's how we're going about doing it. It's not white label. We are literally asking our readers to tell themselves about themselves to us, right? And we are actually running this as always on. We only want to enrich the data more and more. So every quarter, we're asking thousands of new people to tell themselves or tell them about themselves to us. I'm really struggling with that phrase.
How do you entice the non-paying, like the paying user? I imagine I've told you I've bought in. So I want you to get better. It's pretty easy to see how they would enter a survey, even if I'm not giving you anything. How do you get a Reggie user or a non-user to do that? Like, I feel like there's almost, how do you prevent self-selection, I guess, bias in those two segments versus the subscriber?
Yeah, that's always a concern. I think, in addition to the self-selection bias, we also just have to trust the users that they're telling us truthful statements about them. And that's the same problem that Google, Facebook, Apple, all these other platforms have as well. Like, you could be lying about who you are, right? The only thing that's really true is your name and credit card information, because they're so tied in, right? But you could lie about your HHI. Ryan could get the survey tomorrow and say that he's making $500,000 a year. And
yeah, which is like way low. So
Yeah.
so that is the challenge. We do a lot of validation. So one of the things that I'm really proud of, and like what I'm also so worried about as an industry, most publishers do a great job of grading their own homework, right? And when that happens, the story is always rosy. And what we've been really focused on is how do we interrogate the data, ensure that it's validated as much as possible. And we're doing that in a few different ways, right? When we get the information, we're actually going through it and making sure that it looks accurate, logical. And then we're also using third-party vendors to validate if this is, good data, also how it performs as well. But I mean, to answer the original question, how do we get people that don't pay us to take a survey? How do you get people to click an ad and buy something? It takes a lot of impressions. It takes,
you tell me.
right. Yeah. If we had the answer here, we're going to quit our jobs and we're going to just create a new
We're going to turn water into wine.
Exactly. But we're our own advertiser right now, right? And we're trying to convince people to take a survey, and it sometimes works really well, and sometimes it doesn't. We obviously see engagement different across each of those audience groupings, but it's enough for us to have enough about people that are subs, a Reggie, and a not. We want a statistically significant sample size for each audience group.
And was this just meant to be an extension of, I think you guys called it Project Feels before?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this just been a steady drumbeat of your, like, this is, okay, first party first, it was like, you basically just came up with, and I don't mean to dilute it or make it sound reductive. You came up with sort of unique ways of packaging contextual. So whether, when you're a motivation, probably a combination of like sentiment, time of day, whatever reader is, like all of that, sort of how an article makes a reader feel. And then I think there was a second step, and then there's been this. So this feels like it's all growing from the same team, group, or like ethos.
Yeah, it's a natural progression. Yeah. So Project Feels, what we dubbed it internally, which is now rebranded to Perspective Targeting, was our first, toes in the water exercise. And it was similar, where we asked readers to tell us how they felt when they were reading certain articles. Like, this isn't us assuming, right? The underlying data, the base data, is all based on what people are telling us. And then we model off of that and then enter that into our systems ongoing, so we can always predict how people are going to feel. That was the first start. And then we launched motivation targeting. We have neutrality targeting, where you can target away from feelings and emotions that you don't want to be around. Like a good example, and this doesn't mean that they bought this or anything like that, but like Disney doesn't want to be around content that is scary or elicits like fear, right? Like, that's just not a part of their brand. They're wanting to surprise and delight people, so that they would try and go away from that. So we want to provide that capability for advertisers. So first party data is just the natural progression of what we would do next. Contextual targeting, we think, is really important for us because of brand safety reasons. And then also just giving our advertisers a unique new product that differentiates the New York Times beyond just our masthead.
How have the conversations around contextual and keyword blocking gone for you guys?
We are having ongoing conversations with every advertiser that will listen to us, an agency. We're also talking to the big verification companies. We've had quite a few conversations. COVID.
Which of those two has been more productive, the advertisers or the third parties?
That's really hard, because you can address a lot more advertisers by talking to the verification companies, because they're representing so many advertisers. So I do think that those have been really productive. The advertiser ones, obviously, like, I think we get a lot more excited in those conversations because brands want to be within the Times. And then going from like being, wanting to align with the times and supporting journalism, which is crucial, to then executing on that, there's a lot of time and different voices. And that's the challenge that I think all publishers see, is like, you'll have a CMO, it's like, I love it. And then by the time it's executed and going to be running on the times, it's a completely different case. It's not all the time, but especially in the programmatic space. But
well, it feels like in both cases, when it's gone down the chain on buyers, or just like, the problem is to make it reproducible. This is constantly the hard part for like, how do I think we all, if we see it one time, know the difference between a good and bad context or brand safety moment with a given word. But how do I make that reproducible for 1 billion impressions a day?
Well, that's why I think the verification companies conversation is so crucial, because they can actually build the technology to make it reproducible, right? It can scale.
I guess this is where I get cynical. Like, can they? When you've made your entire business on doing a thing one way, being asked to like reinvest a whole lot of engineering assets for a different way that may or may not make you just the exact same amount of money. I'm concerned about whether they really care. And like, why would it feels like they don't have an incentive to, unless buyers start saying, I'm not going to buy that way anymore.
Their incentive is retaining their clients and doing what their clients want, right? And I don't know, like,
but they found new clients and publishers.
But
right? So it's like
as often or as much.
So it's like, but anyways, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's like, all of our discussions have been like, Ryan, the collateral says yes, right? Everything says yes. And then like Jay, like you were saying, to make the reality happen from here to here, everything in the middle, right, is like sometimes just kind of doesn't make it happen. But I just think it's fascinating. They want to play both sides, and it's okay. I mean, it's understandable, but in order to make that happen, so I didn't mean to cut you off, but I mean, it's just like they found a new pool of, you know what I mean, which is publishers, right? So.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say the advertiser customers have bigger budgets than all the publishers combined. So, sure.
But imagine, and remember, like gains and growth, right, is about like showing, hey, I did this here, I did this there, and they're not always whoppers. Right. I mean, like this.
Part of me feels like what will happen is it's going to take some sort of incumbent to prove that there's better return on ad spend doing something else and starting to pull a couple of those big clients away. And then all of a sudden they get acquired, or the other companies do what they do best, which is like copy a feature. And then maybe that'll get us there. But it feels like it's not, no one's going to naturally change their business if nothing is forcing them to.
But I will say, like, obviously this COVID pandemic is terrible. It's devastating. Over 100,000 people died. That's awful. There is small silver lining in the publishing space. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, especially Ryan at The Atlantic. There are a lot of advertisers that want to support journalism and are actively talking to us more. And they're talking to their verification companies. They're talking to their agencies and like, how do you do this, right? And there's other agencies that want to do that by default, supporting journalism. So like, out of all things, this is the right time for the verification companies to get on board for that. And I think they are. It's hard. Like, they have a really, really hard job. And like, I feel bad for them. I mean, I hate clouds now a lot. But I also, like, we also work with clouds, right? Like, they are our verification company that we work for as a brand. And like, what they're trying to do in the technology that they have created and continue to evolve is really difficult, really, really difficult. And so, is it possible? Typically I'm the cynical one, Ryan, but I guess I'm the optimist in this one. I do think that it will improve, but it will never be perfect. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you and I were at the same meeting where Brian O'Kelly once said, he's like, basically, until it looks different in the DSP, it's not going to matter. And that's my concern. That's my cynicism.
We need the DSPs to dive in here, right? Like, when it's a human decision, we're obviously going to be erring towards the side of like less risk, one, for job security and making sure that I get the results that I need. And so
I don't want to get
how can the platforms, the DSPs, make changes to help, buyers make, better decisions? Also, we need more trade groups to do more research, right? It can't be the Atlantic, News Corp, and the Times always grading their own homework and saying that ads perform great on news. Obviously, we're going to say that, right? And it's true. I agree and believe that, but we need more trade groups. We need agencies to come out and talk about that to support their advertisers.
Better trade groups. I don't know if more. Do we need more? Do
we are active members in all the trade groups.
So, a lot of money to be in them.
Yeah, that's a fun membership.
But yeah, like that needs to happen. Like we all have our research teams, our insights team that proves these things, but it ultimately comes down to how do we get others to say it and then adopt it.
All right. I could go any number of ways because we've exhausted for the audience. We've exhausted our two main talking points. So now I just get to pelt, or Eric gets to pelt Jay with questions. No. So you said before that with COVID now it looks like that some agencies and advertisers are finally starting to warm to the conversation. Because at least for me, at first it just appeared that everyone was like, pull the chute, fuck, we got to get out of here. And then and that was like end of March, beginning of April. And then they slowly started to come back. And you said now it seems like they're having more nuanced conversations around COVID. I constantly get asked this question of like, when's the rebound, or like, where are we versus where we should be?
Yeah.
How does it feel for you guys? For us, I think I said in a previous podcast, but it still feels to be true that we're on like Q 1.5.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It just feels super weird. I don't know. Whenever you're asked to give forward-looking projections as to where you guys are going to end for the year, do you feel confident that we're going to have a strong fourth quarter, third quarter?
I do have to be careful here. We're a public company, and this is being recorded.
I don't want numbers. I don't want anything else like that. I don't even want percentages. Just like, actually, just your confidence in your ability to forecast forward. And so,
we did come out with Q2 guidance. I believe the number is 50% down in advertising for Q2, and I would suspect that number is probably very similar for a lot of other pubs. If you're a programmatic first publisher, not like us, I would guess that maybe that number is a little bit different, right? Because direct is, a lot of marketers are worried about their bottom lines, making decisions, and they have, pull marketing spend. That's
Direct's
usually where
big money. They got to get their messaging in order. That stuff's more likely to push.
And it can sometimes be tied to like packages too, right? So you've got
exactly.
Right, like your events and all
custom
that,
content, events, like any of that stuff.
Yeah, like realistically, like going to your question, in my confidence in forecasting, I am very confident in my forecast and how it will end up, and what is actuality versus forecast, because we have we've done a lot of work there to make a rigorous forecast. We've also started looking for new cues to help us understand when the market's going to bounce back. Not giving too much detail, but like I've really started to believe that programmatic PMPs specifically can be a bellwether transaction type. They are, obviously marketers and buyers have much more control in switching on, switching off. And if you really look in the data, I would encourage other publishers to look in like down to the day of when PMPs started fluctuating. And, when there's like, I know other publishers are saying that PMPs are starting to rebound. What does that translate to in the direct business, right? And I'm starting to look for those new data points to be, bellwethers and help my forecast and inform it. If Q2 is down 50% for the Times as we provided guidance, and we were down in Q1, full year is going to be really tricky, right? And you have to assume that marketers are going to have some risk reservations, right? That there's going to be a second peak. Now, that may never happen, but I'm sure they're also factoring that in. So I think the entire year is going to be challenging for all publishers.
was about to say, to save you from getting into any, I don't even know which federal commission does the money. I'll step in and give my 2 cents on just why I'm concerned about.
I think I was vague enough.
Yeah, you were good. You were good.
Yeah,
but yeah, Ryan, talk about your.
I can talk. I can talk about as a private company, not public facing. No, just like there are things like this is such a weird. I mean, doesn't need to be said. Such a weird year, but like to have for a news publisher to have a presidential election year at the same time as a possible second wave of coronavirus, in a particularly divisive presidential election year.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is not going to be, John Kerry, and like it's just like this is so. And for better or worse, publishers do very well in highly divisive, big news eras. It's just weird. You just don't know. Yeah. It feels like the volume will continue to be there. It's not. I don't know about you guys. For us, we're not seeing the same level of page views that we were at the end of March, which was like we were seeing something like triple the amount that we normally do. Still seeing elevated, but like just not at that level. But like, will it like? I don't know what happens with conventions. Do we have conventions? Are they all virtual? What happens with that? Like, is it all mail-in voting? Like, what does that do to the news cycle? What does it do if Trump isn't going every single day and saying a new crazy thing in front of 1,000 or 30,000 people, and instead has to say it via Zoom? I don't know. Like it just feels. I feel very good at my understanding of math. I feel very good at my understanding generally of forecasting and how forecasting works. I feel like I have no idea what like June looks like or July, or like the normal cyclic stuff that I look for is just not present. So it's, to your point, you're constantly just trying to find new things that could tip its hand into what's going on. I think just the hard part is there's so much macro going on at the same time that is so far outside of ad tech that like, I don't know. I don't have to say it, but unprecedented times goes all the way down to budgeting.
For sure. And like, when I say I'm confident in forecasting, I'm our capability of forecasting, to clarify. But like, this is going to be potentially the most volatile year that we've had in recent memory, for sure. I mean, it started with Kobe's helicopter crash and death. And like for most news publishers, I'm sure that was a huge day for them as well, because it was such a cultural sad moment. And then pandemic happened. I mean, murder hornets happened. Like I saw an Insta the other day. Like
what happens to marketer budgets? Like, are they told they don't have to spend it in the fiscal year, or do they still have, like, do agencies still have to spend budget by fiscal year regardless? Like what happens here? Yeah, that's the part that I'm just like, do we just see a metric ton of spend in like Q4? Is that just what we see, where everyone's like, well, I haven't spent it till now? Or like, because agencies don't want to not spend that and not get their 12% or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, so,
well, I mean, I think that's a good setup for some guests that we have coming up in the next couple of weeks. Is that we're gonna hear directly from the marketers, right? Like what they're gonna do, right? But no, continue.
I mean, marketers and companies are beholden to their investors, right? And it comes down to the investors' patience and appetite for profits and revenue, right? So there's going to be a company that they're going to have a shorter leash versus another company with a longer leash. And those ones with shorter leashes, the investors want their return, and they're going to, ask them to get that revenue. The ways that you drive business is through marketing and good products. So I think that some will come back. I don't know if all will come back in the way that they once did. And it'll be interesting which of those companies, which of those industries feel that pressure more than others. So I don't know. I mean, that's the part where we just got to really, really closely look at the data and figure out what industries are coming back. Like I'm looking at sales category or industry data every day across all three channel types: programmatic, open, PMP, and direct. And it's interesting to see where there's some positivity and how do you lean into that there more.
My last question, and then we can wrap. I think I've taken too much of your time already, Jay. I asked this of Laser. She had a good answer for it, but you come from yield. You got some yield bona fides. So for the average publisher, like what's a yield trick or tip, something that like just the average publisher doesn't do or should do that you think like that you pay a lot of attention to, or at least used to?
I didn't listen to Laser's answer on this. I should have.
No, I haven't. We haven't posted it yet. So
okay,
that's why.
all right. Now I'm curious of what she said. You know, like looking back, maybe 5 years ago, I was all about squeezing every penny out without doing a lot of the analysis on what that actually means in return and the work that it requires. And so a lot of pubs have asked me, is like, what exactly that question, what have you done in COVID to maximize revenue? The real answer is I don't want to mess anything up. So I've done a lot less and let the machines actually do what they're programmed to do as much as possible. And that is my trick, I guess, is like sometimes doing less is more. And I think we all are really like, we all try to preserve our jobs. And in that preservation, we make things really complex and difficult. And sometimes, you know, you eke out several $1,000s more of revenue and you can post about that and show that, you know, you've done your job in there. But that work may have cost 3x to do, right? And, or you don't have the appropriate measurement tools to know that maybe, yeah, you showed more revenue in this partner, but then your other partner drops more and it offset the value. So for us right now, it's been, you know, let's really focus on our direct business, our ad products where, you know, first party is, and let's put the time and resources there and less on optimizations that may not really be fruitful in the long run. So my answer is less is more, is good sometimes. And that's what we're preaching on the yield side. I know that's not exciting.
No, that's a refreshing take, because I ran into this issue, especially during COVID, where it was like, what can we do to squeeze out more money? And it was like, sort of, we did the work before this. Like, we kind of have to like let Jesus take the wheel here, because there's nothing we can do to.
Fair and wood, great.
But like, you know, you set the foundation. Hopefully you've done all the work beforehand to set the foundation to make it as efficient as possible to buy you, to have everything in place, to have your reporting in place if or when something breaks. And then you just gotta, to your point, trust the machines a bit, like, because
like again, like 5 years ago, like I remember optimizing by position, right? Like, oh my gosh, mid 55 on article blah 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 is not monetizing as well. What do I do? And I made like $24 more. That was great. But it's just not worth it. So I'm glad it was a refreshing take. I'm sure younger, less experienced Jay, if he was hearing this, he'd be like, that guy, what he sold out. But he's actually
lazy. He's just taking his paycheck.
Yeah. Definitely not lazy. A lot of attention elsewhere. But it is, just less is more sometimes is better. I like listening to other publishers talk about, sometimes pontificate about their ideas and strategies, and I'll, listen to them. And if they're interesting and, not super invasive or resource, intensive, I'm all in. I'll listen and try and figure that out. But it has to align with our strategy as a business as well, right? It does help not having to optimize app anymore for programmatic. That has really reduced the burden, because I know app is so difficult for a lot of pubs. But my main attention is how do I get more direct advertisers within app now as well, right? And especially since it's our most engaged environment, it's like, you need to be here. You're going to see the performance that you want. So,
well, there it is. Well, thanks for joining us, Jay. Listen, we still have a lot of this year to go. As crazy as it is, like, so much of it's already gone. And we hope you'll come back and hang with us another time to talk some more. And
maybe we'll finally get that drunk history episode out.
Woo,
oh my gosh,
that's right. What do we got? That 3 years in the making now? 2 years?
There's been a long text chain about this.
I feel like, have you seen the show Impractical Jokers? Like, some of them have like like legit professions before they went on TV to make fools of themselves and make everyone laugh. I think that would have to happen for me if I wanted to go into the drunk history game. I don't know if any publisher would employ me. So I'm love the idea.
We could all wear masks.
Safety in numbers.
We could all hide our identity. We could wear like masks. You know what I mean? Like, what's that singing show where they wear those masks?
The Masked Singer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, there is like articles out there like this always happens to me. There's a few publishers that have similar voices, not necessarily the sound of your voice, but like in quotes, you could be like, oh, that's Ryan, oh, that's Jay, or that's someone at Business Insider or someone at News Corp, right? And like we all have similar like voices and things. And I always like, was this you? This is you, right?
Yeah. Oh, whenever there's an unnamed and like a big name publisher, unnamed on background, I'm like,
it's a confession series.
I'm just it's. There's
Industry Insider says, and you're like,
one article that I don't want to pick on the publication, but they're like, national newspaper, and I finally figured out who it was, and I'm like, they're not even a newspaper, but everyone thought it was me because it sounded like me, and then this publication said national newspaper, so it has to be the Times and Jay, and that one was not so pleasant. That one was a pretty tough article, and
I think I remember this.
It was
trying to figure out who it was.
I remember.
and like I had partners calling me. They're like, "You're not allowed to say this out. There's NDAs, and you have to respect the NDAs." I was like, "You're absolutely right. I do respect my NDAs." That wasn't me. And they're like, "Well, who was it?" I was like, "Look, there are other people that sound like me. Go knock on those doors and figure it out." So, yeah.
Hopefully, it wasn't me. I don't think it was me.
It wasn't you. You would have known. Yeah. The person that I'm talking about, we both know the story now. So if they hear this, they'll know exactly who I'm talking about. So.
All right, Jay, thank you for taking time out of your Sunday.
Thanks, brother. Good to see you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a good one. Bye.